So, without any further ado, I would like our panelists, so Professor Adriaan van der Weel, who already had a presentation here, please come to us here. Tomasz Stawiszyński, who is well known and requires no introduction to the Polish audience, but he's a philosopher, writer, podcaster, a journalist. Tomek, please come and take a seat on a chair. Jarosław Gugała, who so modestly is standing over the journalist, ambassador, diplomat, CSM expert. So for International Studies Center. Åsa Lind, a writer, writing mostly for children in Sweden, and Maia Mazurkiewicz, the PZU Foundation president, a journalist as well. You can take your seats. Adriaan?
I teraz jedna prośba ważna.
One request, an important request from all of those who are taking care of the sound system, but also because we have got online viewers, we have to hold the microphones very close to our mouth. So this is a request to all of you. Thank you. So maybe I will start with a philosopher. Tomek, you have reading a book, and I'm a fan, a psycho fan, but the Rules for the Times of Chaos, it was published a few years back. It was a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. But it was not just because one of the rules that you've mentioned there was reading books. But of course, I would happily talk about that as well, at least a little bit. So there is research showing that reading calms us down, but you write more broadly about it. Please tell us more about how you view reading books in times of chaos. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure that I have come here to meet you. Thank you for the invitation to this conversation. Yes, there are 12 rules in the books, and one of them is read books. And I make it more visible. And this is not just about literature. It is also about seeing two advantages reading literature. And one of them is the pragmatic, technical part. Reading, and there are a lot of studies, neuroscience talk about it, a lot is being talked about it, written about it. You know this research. Reading really influences our minds, our skills. When we have physical exercises, that influences our body and also our heart and its efficiency, as well as other important parameters. Reading teaches us abstract thinking. It influences our memory. It trains our memory, our imagination, our concentration, which in the era of social media and electronic media that weaken our cognitive abilities in many different ways, reading is very useful and very important. On top of that, I believe that it is very important to shape the abstract thinking ability. That is the way of thinking that allows us to take a certain perspective, to capture the pattern, to capture the structure, that also allows us to distance ourselves from certain emotional dimensions. So in the modern landscape of social media, that is dominant. So practically speaking, the social media and electronic media architecture is created in such a way that we should be constantly aroused and also enraged for many different reasons. It is useful for those who create that technology. The ability to think in an abstract manner allows us to have a different perspective and makes us less prone to propaganda, to persuasion in politics, in marketing, and many other persuasions. So it has got a very pragmatic dimension, and whoever reads can understand themselves better. Who reads is prepared better to handle different parts of the perspective of our world, of the surrounding world. But there's also another aspect which is, if not equally important, maybe even more vital than the first one. What is it? Well, reading is probably the only way that has been worked out by humanity to enter the head of another human being, to be able to understand, to see, to access how the other person feels, thinks, and views the world. It is not just the person in front of us, but also someone who lived in a different era, historically, different times, in a different culture. So that would be shaping mentalization in psychological terms. This is also a very trendy word and a very broad term in psychology and psychotherapy at the moment. So mentalization is trying to understand the other human being, someone with feelings, with emotions, with interest, separate from me, but analogical at the same time. So reading shapes mentalization and increases our quality of life and creating the world when there is more compassion, more understanding, which in the era of social media and identity wars is something very useful and something that we are missing. This is why I believe we should be reading books. Thank you. That's the way it is. But it was also interesting for me as I was reading your book that I got the impression that reading overlaps with other themes. For example, you write, don't trust your emotions. So reading also allows you to harness your emotions, that this chapter also allows you to go to other thoughts. But I would like to go to Åsa.
So, because we were talking about you as an author meeting hundreds of children or readers in general, but a lot of children among them, and how you see them becoming very empowered through reading. Could you tell us about that experience a bit? I think it's actually very close to what Tomasz said in the understanding of reading as a means to make us all subjects in the positive term, not objects of communication, but real people that have their say.
My field is close to the children, of course, as being a children's writer. I get the reactions, I participate in different kind of reading projects, and I also lecture for grown-ups about reading from the early ages. And the picture books is one of my field of both hard work and great joy. And becoming a reader is a process over time. And we are never finished with becoming better readers or elaborate our reading, go deeper. It's not something we learn at one point in life, and it's not like riding a bike, you know. It's something else. So the connection in between becoming a reader and democracy. I jump into that one if you if you're fine with it. It's not only that we should read to be part of democracy or to advocacy for a democracy or be, you know, like good citizens, but it's also a question of understanding democracy as an act through reading as an act. And especially for small children in preschool, kindergarten, and the first years in school, we as adults, if we are aware of the democratic mechanisms, we can really make reading into an experience where the children understand what that is. We don't need to talk about it, we are doing it. And that is to be sharing power. Because part of democracy is to share power and distribute power in a way so it can be a part of our everyday lives. So, by including children in the process of choosing books, of reading books, how to read them, and respond, having discussions. This sounds very simple. But after talking to preschool teachers, this evoked a lot of emotions and a lot of discussion. Since it turns out that most preschool facilities have someone that is the professional person, someone who chooses the books, someone who is better on reading loud than others. And know how to put the questions. So I took this example.
So you're saying they have problems to distribute the power, actually?
Yes, yes, because democracy is something...
At a very low level.
Yes, it's definitely. We as sorry, the microphone is talking to me. That word is very difficult. Childhood is a place where we are less in power. And that is the only common thing you can say about any child anywhere in the world. To be able to be part of the life as readers, as subjects, grown-ups will have to share the power. There is no other way. And this is also how democracy works. If we are not given our fair share of power as citizens, we have to take it. And then we have some kind of revolution, you know, if you put it very shortly. But distributing power through the act of reading, that is like a hand-on lecture in democracy for those who are less in power, the children.
You also told me about the experience of sort of seeing children immediately empowered through their experience, right? That was. I mean, for me, that was a very important and interesting conversation we had. That you said, children, after having read a little and after having understood and having seen that they can read and can understand, suddenly become different children, right?
Yes, and I think that at one point happens to all children. We have to be aware of this process to encourage that feeling. And also by once again letting go of the power. Do not ever think that you know anything about what a child has experienced during a reading session. One has to ask, but one has to ask open questions that encourage a conversation. Never yes or no questions. This was a good book, wasn't it? And then the child goes, yay, this was a good book, because the idea of communication, conversation is to agree. Then everyone is satisfied. But ask, what did you like about this book?
Or what didn't you like?
The second question is, what didn't you like? one do not have to like everything that is put in our hands. And giving the opportunity to express these kind of thoughts leads us to a place where we can openly share different kind of opinions. Democracy, you know.
Thank you. Przejdę teraz na polski, bo bym chciała się zapytać.
I'm going to switch to Polish now because I would like to ask the fourth power. Also speaking about reading like empowering or sharing power. And our Boleslav, the King Boleslav the Brave, came to my mind because he was reading at the times that not many people were reading because he felt that this means power. Because media today, well, we speak a lot about the fact that there is a race for information because, but it's supposed to be all simple. We know that fact-checking is very difficult nowadays because the world is full of disinformation. How are you dealing with that? How, from the perspective of a journalist who has a really huge experience, who cares, but at the same time we would like to be relatable. We don't want to be old-fashioned. We want to be modern. So how the media world is dealing with this situation, in my opinion, it's not really successful in dealing with it. Well, of course, it's about like our role of the media as teachers, as recipients. This is very difficult because the times are difficult. It's difficult to be a teacher. And theoretically, everyone has access to every type of knowledge, but at the same time, they don't have guides who would take them safely through this knowledge. Therefore, what is happening, we could call a massive breeding of an aggressive idiot. And it's happening all over the world. Populism is growing in power. The cult of ignorance is growing, obscurantism. In the United States, for instance, I was reading research about that. Maybe this is fake news. This is the hope, but I'm afraid not. That 8% of the population in the United States believes that the Earth is flat. 8% of the American population is 30-some million people, so it's like the population of Poland. And the worst in all of that is this category that a few percentage of people that was asked about it who answered, I don't have an opinion about it. So now, if we would want to say that this state of minds, or this, nicely speaking, désintéressement that comes from French with the facts, is so huge, so universal, that it results from something simply. It results from the fact that it's easier not to know. It's easier to become emotional. I'm sorry, I have to say that it results from the fact that there are not enough people who are well enough, as Åsa described it, invited to read. Because if they were invited to read, I'm going to move to that part in a moment. Well, unfortunately, something really bad happened, and we see it everywhere. In Europe, in the United States, everywhere, in many countries. What's more, there is this cult of obscurantism, obscurity that was born, and lack of knowledge. And we have seen it during the last elections in Poland when the candidate that was people complained that he knew too many foreign languages. Well, and he had to explain himself why he speaks many foreign languages. So I think it's similarly with reading books. Nowadays, an average young boy in school, if he would start such things as we are saying here, that it's great to read books, that he read something interesting recently, he would really have a tough time with his friends at school, with his peers. This is the problem. And we need to do something to convince people that there is a value in this. Or maybe if we cannot show them that there is value, we should scare them and tell them that democracy has to exist not in order for us to go voting, etc., but it has to exist so we can peacefully pass down the power. Because if it doesn't exist, every time there will be war. So maybe fear will provoke people to read. Media became commercialized in big part. They don't adhere to the rules, to the principles. The simplest message is presented in the wrong way. I was listening to the radio coming here, and a big part of our guests is listening to the same radio station very often, I'm sure. And there was information about what one of the guests on the radio said, and it was started with the quote from that person that was presented as a truth. And at the end, it was added that this was said about this one or that one. This is a typical mistake. Because electronic media is linear, and for a sentence to make sense, you have to say, this and that man in our studio 15 minutes ago asked about this and that, said this and that. And they presented it in a different way. They said this and that was said by this and this person. These are details, but if we go deeper, this results in the fact that us, the media, we are at fault for the state of the minds of our society. This is a sad constatation and very difficult, and I must admit I don't have a good way out. Okay, there are people in the room who are becoming active. Yeah, I wanted to say something which is a bit agitating. Well, it has become very fashionable to produce very long podcasts nowadays, and this shows us that we have this need to have some longer form. Well, the scientists or scholars differentiate between reading and writing, but if someone reading and listening, if someone is able to listen to a serious conversation for 3 hours about something serious, this is something noticeable. But I would like to ask Maia about something, because she is the CEO of PZU Foundation, and she also runs a program about disinformation. She deals with disinformation and counteracting disinformation for many, many years. And how you approach it? Why? Well, we understand why your program was created, but how do you perceive this? Whatever Jarek said. And also, I assume, I hope that there is a positive role of the media here. And of course, also, we would like to ask you about counteracting fake news. How much we have the opportunity for the AI which creates fake news would be preceded by AI that we will teach to detect fake news. There are a lot of questions, but maybe I'll start with what Jarek said, that we don't want to know. And I'm not really sure that it's true that we don't want to know. In my opinion, there's so much information that I don't know what to choose, where to get the knowledge. So I could say, I don't know, I don't want to know things about this candidate because I don't know if this is true. And why should I believe it? And this is a problem. We live in the times that we have so much information. Our brains stayed in the times hundreds years ago with one newspaper, and this is where we are with our minds. We need this control. We are afraid of the future. We would like to know what would happen in the future, but on the other hand, who will tell us? And on the other hand, we have so much information around us. A lot of it are images, in big part generated by AI. We don't know what is truth and what is not. That especially young people are lost in all of that. And not necessarily they need to draw from the media that should give them the information which is verified. But looking at the Polish media, maybe not always it is verified. And I think the media has to do a lot because, for instance, Der Spiegel, I talked to them 3 or 4 years ago. They had like, I don't know, 80 fact checkers. And in Poland, we don't have so many fact checkers. There's no money for that. So I think that this is a deeper problem, existential problem. So how myself as a human being is supposed to deal in this world where I'm bombarded by information and everyone wants something from me. It gives me information, so I should know everything. I could know everything. It's not in my mind. I don't have to read the book. I'm just going to go on Google. And in a moment, we'll have those glasses and everything will be in our glasses. It's going to be in a few years only that it's going to happen. And this is it pretty much. And I don't need to know anything. And I think this is the problem, which is the main quintessence of why I work with disinformation for 10 years, because it started with democracy.
That would be 2015 when I worked in the Chancellery of the President of the Republic of Poland. In 2014 and 2015, I also dealt with the theme of the first invasion of Russia onto Ukraine, and that was about information, disinformation. And that was the first method, disinformation, of attack on the society. So these days, we live in a world when we discussed whether the Third World War is going to happen or not, because Iran and Israel are so pumped up. And we have this information and disinformation in ourselves, in our hearts. It influences our emotions, what we should believe in, what we shouldn't believe in, whether this picture was taken in the Gaza Strip or maybe elsewhere, because the conflict was already established by New York Times as the first conflict over the internet. And so this is very difficult to imagine. So really, knowledge is key, and we should know it. And we have this knowledge through reading. So we should really also make people aware that that the internet is the way it is. And if I am aware of it, I can pause, I can stop. And when I scroll to the social media and it influences my emotions, I know that I can put the phone down, I can calm down. And also, well, with the first piece of information may just come out blasting, but then it can be verified. There will be also commentaries by journalists that I trust, whom I trust. So, of course, in the world full of chaos and fear, and we are very nervous, certainly taking a book is important, and this is why the rules for the times of chaos, these are really key.
Because Maia just said that actually we obviously need knowledge. We need reading in order to sort of try to understand what is the fake news, what is not a fake news. If you're hearing English a second time in your ear, you can sort of, no, it's fine. So, because I had seen PISA's research from, I think, 3-4 years ago, in the 21st century reader research, right? They say the strongest predictor of children's media literacy, so their capability of understanding what's on the news and sort of discerning the truth from an opinion, let's call it that way, or fake news, is having read 100 pages of a book during the last, I think, quarter of a year. So is that your deep reading? Is that sort of the answer that we might have?
Yes, it's not automatically deep reading, but that's definitely where deep reading begins. You could theoretically deep read a tweet, but of course the dimensions would be limited. Maybe the first thing to say is that it's there's a correlation one way between thinking and reading, and that goes from reading longer, more demanding texts, preferably on paper, interestingly enough, to an understanding of digital situations, including fake news and all that, and not the reverse. If you understand how digital media work, that doesn't automatically transfer into a deeper understanding of textual reading. So I think if you wanted to put your money on one of the two, you'd have to do it on long-form paper reading. Of course, length in itself is a factor as well. Length requires keeping things in memory. It requires cognitive patience. It allows you greater depth of vocabulary. It allows greater narrative complexity, and you name it. So the 100 pages are indeed, well, maybe not a golden standard, but a good indication. If you can actually do that, which is challenging, as we've just seen, then you can do a lot more. But not vice versa. If you can read tweets well, it doesn't mean that you can read longer and complex text.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're starting to have questions from the audience. Maia, you wanted to say something?
Ja po prostu przysłuchuję się tej rozmowie.
I'm listening to the conversation, and I have a question to the fourth power. I really would like Jarosław Gugała to talk regarding agency. What do you do yourself? You are all here active and involved. What do you do to counteract everything that you have mentioned? Because we know the analysis and we observe it as well. What do you do? And what do people around you do? Because you have widespread social influence and what you describe as a reality. Can you please share your initiative as well? Because they can be contagious, and we could support you, maybe. I do my utmost. I was afraid of this answer, said the asker, Jarosław Gugała. But for many years, I have been promoting the idea that in Poland we would have a holiday dedicated to books, something that was once created in Catalan, and it spread throughout Spain. So this was St. George is the patron saint of Catalonia. So there are lots of meetings, there are books in the streets, and I have been talking about it for years, and I believe we should do it for the holiday of St. John. This is the Midsummer Night, and this is also the name day of Jan Kochanowski, the father of Polish literature. So I have been doing this, and a public library in Kielce picked up that idea. So I go to Kielce, I walk the streets, I give out books, and the president, the mayor of that city, joined me also last year. They are women from the public library, including the managing director as well. So I speak with people, and it's about convincing people that reading is good for you, it's worth doing. And I have read in the research by National Library that children who grew up in places, at homes where there were no books and people didn't read books, they are not going to read as adults. So if books are available at home, it gives you a chance that somebody, out of sheer boredom, even, while sitting on the toilet, will reach out and start reading this book. So when we talk about fake news and other nightmares of today's media life, I try not to support this. I really check it at my own level. I also try to stick to the rules of editing the news. I try not to do it. I try to be straight, because then people don't know whether this is the truth or it's a quotation from someone. If we are on the radio or TV, we have to state very quickly, this person said, and then what they said. When we write it, it's not so important because everybody is going to read what they said. But on the radio, they are not going to read it. And this is when they stay with this stupid knowledge, silly knowledge. So we really need to see what can be done at our level. And recently we have been inseparable. And on the radio recently, we talked about similar subjects. So we have got a lot of different sources of information, and a lot of them are unchecked information, pieces of information. So people can simply manipulate us. Like children, we are not able to verify that we get that information, and that is wrong. We know that there is an initiative by the French that we should have a public internet that's going to be like a stamp. Everything that's in that internet, in that network, everything has been checked. So there will be no porn, there will be no silliness, there will be no other demons and fake news that make us idiots. As simple as that. So this is what I try to do. And unfortunately, I feel really bad representing an industry that, well, to a greater degree, is responsible for making the world and people idiots. Thank you for this defense. I can see more arousal also in the audience. So there is a question, we'll get back to it just now. But the question now is, what would happen if we would punish the media for fake news? And Tomek, please tell us what you wanted to say. I would like to refer to what was mentioned during the discussion just here, because it is easier to get into this attitude where different conflicts, when people say rational readers and irrational non-readers. I think that this is an oversimplification. As you've mentioned, people read different things, and they also look at different sources as sources of credible information. There are probably two basic issues. First of all, there is the general lack of trust to institutions, to science, to mainstream politicians, to everything that is part of the so-called mainstream culture. I believe that here politicians and a certain way of thinking about politics that dominated the 1990s and early 21st century was about it is about the project and politicians who should really think what they have done wrong, why, and why they are also responsible for the lack of trust to the politicians, because it is easy to say that it is those dark ones, those who came and took away whatever belonged to us. It's easy to think that way, but it's worth thinking where the lack of trust comes from. And the second aspect is about views and attitudes. This is a very non-intuitive phenomenon. It is the following way. There are certain attitudes, false or true, they also influence the political world. So there was a researcher at the Harvard University who conducted studies regarding climate change. So what is intuitive? Well, those who are right-wing, the Republicans, they are more skeptical regarding the scientific consensus regarding anthropogenic climate change. And those who vote for the Democrats, they are more likely to support this scientific consensus. For the majority of us, that would be intuitive. However, the second part shows that it is those who vote for the Republicans, they understand the processes more, they understand the terminology more than those who vote for the Democrats, who agree and support that consensus. However, they don't have the argument. So they can say that, yes, the source is anthropogenic. Yes, that's the way it happens. That's the way we should talk. This is how we identify ourselves, but they don't really understand it better than those who are skeptical. The same goes for conspiracy theories. They go right and left. And so the mainstream media and non-mainstream media use conspiracy theories, for example, in a political war.
So like conspiracy theories, every party defines what the other one presents. And the one that presents believes that they only have justifiable suspicions because conspiracy theories, it's only the others that have it. So this landscape, it's not so obvious. And I think that all those who represent a certain type of worldview and certain type of options within media and politics, the more liberal, the more rational, from the definition point of view, should first of all look at themselves and where are they irrational, where they become polarized, and afterwards look for faults in the others, because it's not so obvious, actually. There was a question from the room. Let's allow this. Well, as a young person, I understand very well that we learn a lot. We have to make a lot of projects, etc., and not always these are things which are interesting for us much. We understand that. And I don't fully know. Well, in such a situation, it's much easier to ask AI and get a shorter answer, full of content. And as we know, AI, just like media, they don't. It doesn't say the truth always. But I don't know how to encourage students so they read longer paragraphs that require more energy than time, and not those short but full of content texts made by AI, from which we get just as much information. Yeah, how to convince people to check their sources. I think that this is a very important question and a key question that you are mentioning, because young people, but actually everyone, wants simple answers. We are sitting here, we have 1.5 hour panel. We can read a book that has 500 pages or 1,000 pages. It's going to be so interesting. But first of all, I believe that if we want to talk about the attitudes which are important for us, if we say that democracy is important for us, then we need one sentence answer, because otherwise we won't be able to reach the youth. And on the other hand, we need to operate in such a way that we'll be able to encourage you. But I always believe that this is not in order to encourage you. But if you are here and you like to read, you could invent a project yourself or an activity that will make you encourage your peers. As a PZU Foundation, we made a contest for high school youth. This is called Clean Message. This is a broader project, and we had a lot of great proposals. Some of them are game cards, some of them are meetings among youth and seniors, and also encouraging to read. And all of them are about critical thinking and about how to make the message to be clean or clear. And I wanted to tell you a little bit more about what we were discussing here and to answer your question if we should punish the media in any way. Well, the media, in my opinion, is not the core of the problem. The core of the problem is that we have the internet, which is relatively young because it's 30 years old, and 20 years old are the social media platforms, and they develop differently. We haven't learned about it, and what's more, we never talked about it, what it should look like. And it is something which is governed by huge corporations, those social media platforms that created this world on their own, and it's mainly about clicking and making good money, and media had to enter it because there is no financing for the media. So media has to present the information in such a way so there are clickbaits. So people click it and it's emotional. So there are a lot of different problems in this.
Yes, could I just add something to the answer to your question, which is about why should we do something that's challenging and difficult if there is an easy solution? And I think you know the answer I'm going to give you. And that is that if you don't do it, you're not going to learn to think. So if you want to keep thinking, then you owe it to yourself to spend the time and energy on doing something that's hard. And that's a very unpopular message, I know, but I think that's the only one I can give you.
Åsa, Åsa, I would like to ask you a question. I'm not sure if Åsa is listening to me. You're listening to the radio? Yeah. No, because I think there's another answer to your question, which concerns the difference between reading a history book and reading literature. I think there's a huge difference between asking a chat GPT or whatever other chat to sort of prepare a resume of what happened in, I don't know, in the 10th century with Bolesław Chrobry, whom I mentioned today, and asking the same chat to prepare a short version of Shakespeare, right? I don't know what you would say to this, but I see a big difference between those two, right? And I'm not sure if you would agree.
Yes, of course. I mean, every different kind of information or experience or intake of an art form differs from each other. One comment also on this: why should we not take the easy way? Continuously, how can we demand from young people that they will do better than grown-ups? You know. So it also falls on all the, not only on your shoulders, but on every living, working person who has connection with searching information. And the same goes with interpretation of any art or any kind of literature genre, that everyone has to be, you know, looked at from a certain viewpoint. And we are demanding a lot from young people, and we are challenging them with different kind of projects, etc., to become all these better persons that we are not ourselves as grown-ups. You know, now when I have become less kind, the older I have become. So nowadays when parents ask me, how will I make my children read? And I say, read yourself. There is no other way. And how can I become a citizen that can that know the difference in between information and disinformation? It is hard work. And there is no shortcuts, really no shortcuts. But as you joked before and said that if they don't understand it, the young people, the use of reading, the loss of democracy, we will scare them. And this is such a fun contradiction because you can't use fear to create democracy, even how very much you would like to do it. But this is something we have to bear in mind, that we all have the obligation to maintain a civilization as we know it, as we would prefer it, but we have to fight for it. Not by fear, hopefully, but by doing the right thing. Do not tell vague information, don't put it forward, ask what is the source of this information, take the discussion with politicians that are frequently users of disinformation to create emotions. Populism thrives on lies, and people swallow the lies. They are like sugar and candy, and they are so nicely decorated, so we eat it. Not we, not the ones sitting in these rooms, but the other ones.
I think we believed a lot of fake news as we sit here also, honestly. I think there's a question there. You have to, please use a micro. Please use a micro.
Just hello, everybody. Just to answer the question of the young lady, referring back to Adriaan here, you mentioned deep reading, and I think the problem is that we're constantly thinking of what is the goal? What is the goal? What's the direction? Reading isn't about that. It's about a process. We're thinking about a product. We're thinking about an end goal. There is no end goal in reading. The process itself is the goal. So if we keep telling kids to look for short summaries of things, they'll keep doing it. We have to say, you have to engage with the book, engage with the process. And when you do that, that's the goal of reading, not to find out the facts, not to get a 2-line summary, because I do it all the time. But that's not the point with deep reading. It's to be part of the process, I think.
And unfortunately, of course, the tech industry advocates this sort of frictionless finding information. And that doesn't exist. And so, I mean, I can't blame you for wanting to go where tech sends you and get quick solutions, but they just don't exist.
We have to use micros. I think we are getting more and more questions right now or comments from the audience. Here too, and I think there's a third one.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Very sorry, can't hear anything. We are wondering about how to diagnose this readership crisis, and of course there is not one right answer. I wouldn't like us to
Za blisko? Za blisko?
Coś ważnego pani powiedziała po prostu.
You said something really important. I think that we need to remember that reading, just like it was said on the panel, it's the issue of identity, also class identity. When the first questions were asked, those that you presented at the beginning, the majority stood up when you were asking about the number of books at home. This is still the basic indicator of middle class or higher middle class. My question is a rhetorical question, actually. How to do it that us, representatives of a very basic discourse, understanding reading as a basic and natural activity that we learn at home from generation to generation, we learn how to read, we learn how to live with reading, how to go out with our experience to the groups that need reading the most. those who do not have this experience that they had for generations at home? Do we have an idea for a language with which we can invite to read? And this is a rhetorical question to us all. And the second thing is teaching. We are talking about attitudes, about critical thinking, critical looking at text, but we are forgetting that this is an ability that we learn. So if we don't approach it with attention at school, at the language or literature classes, we need to remember that we need to learn how to read with small steps to build this very complex competence. Then we won't find pleasure in reading. So this is the answer to the question how to do it. Out of our research that we do in the School of Education, this is small research, but we know that one of the basic barriers in readership is that students say, we don't know how to do it. We are terrified because we're terrified with 350 pages that make us helpless. So this is all. We need to learn how to read.
Asa, you quickly, and then audience.
Your first question, that is not a rhetorical one. It's a very practical one. There are so many extremely good examples for how to bring out reading to all kind of children. I think every European country or in the US, we have extremely good competence.
And the second panel will be about
that
it.
can be done, no problem.
So maybe we'll take questions from the audience and then come back to Jarek.
Dzień dobry, Andrzej.
Hello, Andrzej from Educo Foundation. We bring the digital world closer to the children, and the digital world and reading are two separate things. They seem to be contradictory, but we find something in common. We teach children how to do coding, and we start with young ages. You've mentioned about the foundation of the Polish statehood. Madam Åsa mentioned about the foundation of reading. We have to start to read to children.
So teachers in preschool should read, the parents should read in order to get children interested in reading. And in order to do that, we can also add technology to that. So we have a small robot that teaches children to develop creative thinking, cooperation, and creativity. But there is no communication without reading. Your turn. I just wanted to ask, how are we supposed to connect reading with a process and not just to get an award when our system education, for example, only teaches us that we should read obligatory reading only to get a good grade? Congratulations for that question from the audience. So we will answer this question. It's not that we don't want to answer your question, but there are also other questions. So we'll take them first. No microphone, no interpretation, since it's impossible. Ladies and gentlemen, I have come from a very small town. I work in a library that serves a community of 9,000 people. So this is really out in the sticks. So there are a lot of beautiful things that we are talking about, but we need to remind people how pleasant it is. And I recall a beautiful conversation at the Conference of Library in Łódź, where you talked about books, about Monet family. I have to admit that that conversation changed my way of thinking regarding that series. So what am I trying to say is that the specialists will surely agree that, well, whoever didn't grow up in a home where you read is never going to reach out to read, because books are difficult. They require some effort. So this is about concentrating on how pleasant it is to read, because with children, and especially young children, go to school. So we have got a great communication with kindergarten children. A little book, a great human being. This was a wonderful campaign. And then, the parents come to the library and they say, oh, that book looks interesting. I'll take it for myself when they come with their kids to the library. So we have to teach the kids, especially the young people, that this is cool and this is nice, but the school doesn't teach it. And so we need to continue to teach our kids. And so when we talk about obligatory reading, then we should really look at how pleasant it is. And what Jarosław mentioned, that no young boy is going to boast that they read. Well, my son started reading a year ago. As a librarian, the last 6 years have been, the times of crying, because my son had to discover it for themselves. So this is about the celebrities, about the Instagrammers, and to choose not the one from the upper league that the young people don't really listen to. We may not like the influencer, the TikTokers, because for us, let's say, they are worthless. But in my opinion, this is the only way to reach the youth. Well, young children are being read to. And the problem is when they are 12, 15, etc. And this is when we can also talk about reading, that reading is cool and it is their methods and not what we are thinking about. So, Jarek, did you want to say something? Well, I have been called out to answer the statement about the media and fake news. That's my basic profession. But we also have a writer here. And I would like to mention that the problem is also that we have to teach the kids and ourselves the pleasure of going deeper into the book, really reading and finding the beauty and the sense in what we are reading. So I used to, be really sad that an average Pole goes to the Philharmonic Hall once in 123 years. And what to do to make them go more often, yes? And we should go more often. But, if they do, then they would just eat candy and we would listen to, candy paper and their sound as well. So if we teach the kids that in what we read there is beauty, and we teach them that for the beauty, there is a need in our intellect, just like for smoking and for pleasures, then we are going to read. There will be more and more people who are going to read literature. It's not just about reading for readers' sake and just reading anything. It's about reading valuable things and finding beauty in them. And also receiving beauty as something valuable and not rejected. So it is the poetry that should be Formula 1 of reading. And they find a poem and they will find beauty in it and they will receive something from it. They will want more and more. So I need to say one thing, that we are calling ourselves the Universal Reading Foundation. It should be universal. So this is also an answer for you and a proposal for you, Radek, so that everybody reads, so that we get a grand foundation, that we try to get the kids to read anything, that even if they read anything, but it makes the kids laugh, then this great foundation, it translates into a greater amount of people reading what you would like them to read. I would like to give the floor to Maia. Yes, I would like to say one thing. We should have this trend for reading, and if we do that, then it will become more trendy. The more people read, the more trendy it will become. So, well, we should really rethink what is obligatory reading at school, because what we have at the moment, it really successfully and effectively discourages from reading in Poland. So, for me, it is still uncomfortable that there are countries where the literacy is high. Well, we hear that in Sweden, for example, in the Czech Republic, the literacy level is high. But there is a question to Professor Adriaan van der Weel. Do you also research resiliency to fake news, for example? What does it look like in high literacy country? If we have a high level of literacy, is there a greater resilience to fake news and other such aspects? Do we have such research?
Of such research, at least I'm not aware of it. It makes sense that there is a correlation, but if there is that research, I haven't got the figures on hand. Sorry about that.
Przepraszam, bo istnieją takie badania, które dotyczą poziomu
There is research regarding, for example, conspiracy theories, and it was run after the pandemic. So, of course, the level of the amount of people increased, of course, regarding the pandemic as a conspiracy theory. So we look, for example, at France and Poland, and also what is happening. So, Jarosław, well, we Poles do not trust anyone, and we don't trust anything. Well, we also know that the resilience grows by reading, so we could say that there is a correlation. Well, in theory, that was Grażyna's intention. Zofia Zasadzka, National Library, Readership and Literacy Research. So, regarding literacy and readership, such research has not been run because it would be very difficult to get the control group. But there is something else. There is propaganda, because fake news is not something new. It is not just dependent on the amount of media and the amount of information. This is also about the Nazi times and who is more prone to propaganda. This is the authoritarian personality with a lot of characteristic features. And something that is in opposition to this authoritarian personality is the more open personality, more critical personality, more independent personality regarding, for example, reading, critical reading and text interpretation. So the education shows up again, the task of the school that should train interpretation and argumentation. populism is something opposite to argumentation and also deep interpretation. Deep reading is interpretation and not just accepting brief communication. So, of course, for the students, there is this great temptation not to get tired by a thick book, by a long book, but just get the message right away. However, the deeper interpretation of a longer text, the color of this communication can be of different shades. It would be good to have the tools to be able to use them as well and interpret them. You have touched a point that's very important for me, because on the one hand, it's much worse than you think, because you talk about a certain type of personality. But no, if it was about personality, something like personality would never show up. But the history took a different turn. But Germany, from a great bourgeois nation, when of course there was anti-Semitism, but it would be at a, let's say, controllable level. Within 2 years, when they were submitting to Goebbels' propaganda, let's call it Goebbels' propaganda, they reached a level of anti-Semitism at 85%. That, in turn, allowed to convince practically the whole nation that Poles and Jews are subhumans. You can kill them just like insects and parasites. It is not about a personality. It is about content that, if it is served in high doses and repeated over and over again, then every personality of every, even a bourgeois person, will turn into a murderer.
We'll take one question because our time is practically up. So please, thank you. The questions and the voices from the audience are quite numerous. I'm going to relate to two that appeared. There was a question about readership research, and the National Library research shows that the youngest readers are the ones that read the most. I would be careful with enthusiasm saying that it doesn't matter what young people read. It's important that they read in general. And it's all right if they read something which is not really valuable. No, I don't agree. It's like with food. It's like if we were happy that it's great that a child is eating fast food, yeah? It's important that the child eats because food keeps us alive. If we get used children to eat whatever they like, so fast food, they're not going to learn to eat French cuisine and draw pleasure from that. And it's going to be very difficult to change the situation. And of course, from one hand, we have to find some slight methods to encourage young people to read and to have contact with books, but we have to be careful and vigilant insofar as what young people read. And we need to encourage ourselves as the specialists on the book market, and I know that there are many people here like that, to read young adult literature and be completely aware of what we are speaking about, to be aware what contents there are in these literatures. Therefore, what contents young people are dealing with and what contents, opinions, and qualities they feed their minds. Because if we believe that reading is something that develops our way of thinking, perceiving the world, taking over some attitudes, we need to remember that reading does that, reading any book. So if youth will be reading books where violence is romanticized, where there is permission for aggressive activities, vulgar sexuality, and young people is excited by these books, books and they find pleasure in these books. It would be difficult if they didn't. I would be not so enthusiastic saying let's read for pleasure, because it's a different to have a pleasure when you're 40 years old and a pleasure when you are 13 or 15 and you read a book. So let's read literature that youth reads, but let's pay attention to the fact that there is a moment that it's worth it to demand from them and to try to show them literature which will increase the level of requirements towards them insofar as their literacy skills, but also educational, also worldview skills, etc. But I wanted to say something more, but my thought escapes me. Going back to obligatory reading, which is a controversial topic in Poland, you say often that they need to read book that they don't want to read, that this is not pleasurable, this is just for tests. Yeah, it shouldn't take place. However, unfortunately, the problem here is the attitude of teachers to the obligatory reading list. If the teachers are laughing at Polish poets, the big names, keep winking and say, I know that this is hopeless, but you have to read it, then the question arises how a young person is supposed to perceive the beauty of the language and the significance of this type of reading, which is a canon of literature. Canon, meaning the foundation of culture in which we live. I don't know any other country which is so much questioning the cultural heritage, which is so beautiful and so old. Okay, so we have 2 more panels. There will be still a possibility to have discussions. And I understand that Åsa needs to say one thing, and afterwards we would take the lunch break. But please, we will have the opportunity to talk more later after lunch break as well.
About quality, I visited an extremely good reading promotion organization in Iran a couple of years ago. And they were working with children, fugitives, they were working also in Afghanistan, etc., hard condition. And we were talking about the quality of the books they had. And I commented something that looks really good, yeah, you know. And she said, those who have none must have the best. So this immense poverty when it came to literature, reading books, etc., she said, no discussion. For that reason, we can only promote the extremely, very super best literature of the world to these children. So, quality matters. Yes.
Thank you. Bardzo, bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you very much to all the panelists and you. And now we'll have a lunch break. And afterwards,